Hello, everyone. We are going to be talking about the Chainsaw Man Reze Bomb Girl arc movie. I know it's been a while since my last upload. And before we quickly begin, did you guys hear what I said? I said Reze, not Reze, not Reze, but Reze. You know, I am arguably one of the biggest Chainsaw Man channels, if not the biggest Chainsaw Man channel on YouTube in terms of volume wise, right? You know, you type in DJ Miles and you see a bajillion Chainsaw Man videos. And the amount of flack I got from not saying Reze's name right. No, it's Reze. It's Reze. I am just so ecstatic for my ego to let each and every one of you know right now. You were fucking wrong the entire time. Wow. Does that feel good to say? Let's say it together. Reze. Ta-da! Okay, and now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about this movie because as you can tell from my energy and enthusiasm, it's a 10 out of 10. Reading the manga, this specific arc with the cinematic love and care and attention to this complete story from beginning, middle to end is a good arc to just go in and experience the movie for what it was. Reze arc was my number one favorite arc in Chainsaw Man Part 1 for the longest time. I think to this day, the International Assassins beats it just a little bit, but on a good day, I would say it's the Reze arc, the definitive best arc, not only for myself, but many people within the community. And let's go ahead and talk about this movie because it's broken down into two sections, right? We see Denji just trying to figure out the love and acceptance. Do people love him for who he is and trying to figure that out? And the slow burn of meeting Reze for the first time, going out on the date with Makima, experiencing those movies. And then we have the second half of the movie where it's nonstop action. I want to talk about the first half. And Denji at this point in the story, following the defeat of Katana Man and the Katana Man arc, you know, Denji's now building this relationship with Aki, Power, Makima, etc. We know his motives. We know where he lies, right? That Makima's the one and only girl for him. And then here comes this girl, Reze. I don't know the voice actress's name. I watched it in subtitles. She did a fantastic job bringing Reze to life. That introduction scene where they meet in the telephone booth. And when we see them, Reze ends up talking about towards the end of the movie about why didn't I take you out in the beginning? Well, I'd probably say because of that first introduction, right? Giving her the flower, being goofy. They're both quirky. There's something really fun about their interaction and seeing it come to life. And keep in mind, when now you have this girl who's come into your life and, you know, just playfully touching your arm and brushing you and all these things, you know, it's so funny where I can think of my inner self when I was a teenager where we have these conversations as men. If you guys can recall in high school, like, wait a minute, this girl's hugging me awfully a bit longer than usual. Why does she always brush her arm when she talks to me? Wait, does she like me? Holy crap. Well, wait a minute. You know what? Now that I think about it, I think I like her too. So that part hits a little close to home because I think it just, you know, when you're a teenager, your emotions are going crazy. I mean, the hormones are going crazy. This is now where I want to talk about the pool scene because I've seen some comments where people are misconstruing the pool scene and they're taking away, I think, the wrong reactions out of it. I'm going to be careful with how I state this because, you know, what I'm seeing is, oh my God, these people are 16, you know, they're naked. Like, you know, why do we see them, you know, playing in the pool for so long? I think that is not the intent of the author. That is not the intent of what the animators were trying to portray, but rather, if you pay attention, especially to the OST, it's very subtle. It's very calming. It's a bit melodic. And although the scene starts off with Denji, you know, taking off his clothes and seeing Reze take off her clothes, like, oh my God, she's naked. Like, you know, my hormones are like kicking into overdrive, right? Immediately, once they're in the pool, I would describe it as something as pure innocence, where they are both free, they are both caring. And while all this is being played out, we see the subtle foreshadowing where you see the spider and the moth or butterfly that get caught in the web. There's this one moment, and I've already seen screenshots of it, where, you know, Denji's looking up at Reze, and personally, it doesn't look like lustful intent. He's looking at someone for the first time saying, oh my God, this is someone who cares about me. This is someone who I think I want to bring into my life. I want to shower them with love. And there's something really pure and innocent about that. And while we see that play out, again, you see the spider grabbing the moth, spinning it in its web, and then, doing what a spider does best. And that is very reflective of what is happening here, where Denji is being very vulnerable in this moment. Reze is being vulnerable in this moment, but of course, Reze has different intent, right? She's luring Denji in, but it's very when she opens her arms, it's like, hey, come to me. And to me, that was one of my favorite scenes because it is so hard to watch, knowing what ends up coming later for Denji and his character and what we see him wrestle in the beginning of the movie. Do I have a heart? I think that's why the payoff when we finally get into the set pieces of the action stuff, especially towards the very end when Denji latches onto Reze and, Reze has this big confession where she's like, I never really cared for you. But then, Denji, being blissfully ignorant, says, well, hey, if I die, it might as well be from the hands of a beautiful girl. And then we see Reze come up to Denji and they embrace, they hug. We didn't really see that in the manga. Reze just quickly approaches Denji and then she kind of snaps his neck, but we see this embrace and Reze can say all this tough shit, but we know what she ultimately ended up doing because that's when she tries running back into the cafe at the very end, right? She wants to see Denji. But anyway, once we get into the fireworks scenes and we see Reze introduce herself as the bomb girl, oh my god, it is more visceral in the movie where you just see blood everywhere in her mouth. I love the introduction when she becomes the bomb girl, where you see her for the first time doing this, right, to the side. It's so great. I think it's such a love letter where we see certain manga panels, right, that are her sticking out her tongue, to even the manga panel we see after the end of the Typhoon Devil. That entire sequence was absolutely bonkers, and I absolutely loved it. Of course, Mappa Studios is the one who did Chainsaw Man, and did anyone get any glimpses of a Sukuna versus Mahoraga, right, where that battle in and of itself, also done by Mappa, felt like this typhoon of chaoticness. Is that a word, chaoticness? Wow, what an absolute crazy masterclass of animation. And again, the manga panel where we see the green and red, I'll show a quick screenshot here. Absolutely fantastic. Now, everything with the Bomb Girl arc is just full stop, non-throttle action. I love everything that happened from the training facility, them running away, seeing the Violence Fiend, seeing Beam. I mean, the ensemble cast of Chainsaw Man Part 1, I think is truly unmatched, especially when we talk about Part 2. And boy, we got to talk about Part 2 at the end of this video. But I totally forgot how much I love this cast of characters. Even when these characters are very short-lived in the story, like Arai or Himeno, we see people, the introduction of the Shark Fiend, Beam. How can you not see him and just see how much he complements the chaotic, goofy nature of Denji, right? Power and Denji complement each other in different ways, and it's funny to see them on screen and their interactions. Beam and Denji also has that rapport, and seeing it on screen was just a bundle of joy. I mean, I don't know why I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Even the moments when Violence Fiend is fighting against the Bomb Girl, where it's like, oh my god, I did this most powerful attack and it didn't really graze you. I love how badass these public safety devil hunters are in Part 1. They take no shit from anyone, even though they know they're on a suicidal mission facing off against Reze. I love that whole training facility sequence because, boy, public safety in Part 2, that is a whole different can of worms. Again, we're going to talk about Part 2 at the end of my thoughts on this video. Let's go ahead and now talk about the big climactic finish again with the Bomb Girl and Denji and the Typhoon Devil and, the Sharknado. And I love all of these references. There's this one sequence, dude, when Reze is facing off against Denji in the building, just blasting him up. And then there's this moment where Reze just starts pulverizing Beam, right? And you see the insides of Beam, right? It's glowing because she's punching him nonstop and Denji's inside of it. That was one of the craziest things I've seen in anime this year. It was so fantastic. Even seeing how chaotic he was with the change, where now he's leveraging his devil abilities. And, that's what they were saying earlier, right? Hey, you got to utilize your battle techniques a bit more. So how all of it played out, I thought was magnificent. You can just tell I'm gushing over the movie, and I think this movie is absolutely fantastic. I think you need to watch it, especially if you're a Chainsaw Man fan. I think it's a love letter to these characters. It opens up a lot more things if you've been following the series. And as a Chainsaw Man fan, I couldn't have asked for any more. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Chainsaw Man Part 2 for a second. Again, if you don't want to know anything about following the events of the Reze arc and what happens in Chainsaw Man Part 2, thank you for watching. I'll give review like 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, guys, what does the Reze arc movie do for me that really highlights the problem I have with part 2? The ensemble cast, I mentioned a little earlier, even when some of these characters have short runs, like the Violence Fiend, like Beam, like Power. Well, not like Power. I mean, Power and Aki stay up until the very end. But you get what I'm saying. Even if they go in and out, this movie really highlighted how much I loved all of them. Aki, Angel, all these people. And in part 2, keep in mind, it is longer than part 1. And although we still have to see before some people say, well, let's see how it ends. Let's see how it ends. I understand that. And I will say yes, to a certain degree. Let's see how it ends. But you cannot tell me with more than 100 chapters in part 2, way more than part 1, that I am still conflicted about part 2, especially when it comes to the ensemble cast. Yes, Yoru and Fami and Yoshida, and Fumiko, they all have their moments. But why do I still feel like there's something missing there? It's like lackluster. Even the people we have, there's not enough for me to invest or care about. I think when we talk about Yoshida and what ultimately ended up happening to him a couple chapters ago, I just felt like it's a complete letdown of a character, and they could have done way more, or we could have got something more revealing about his character. This is all to say, I really loved how much Reze Bomb Girl arc really sparked the interest in why I adore the series. And to see part 2 for what it is, it's fine, it's serviceable. And again, this isn't an attack on me if you like part 2 just as much, if not more than part 1. I envy you. That is great. I'm just telling you how I feel, that after watching the ensemble characters in part 1 and where the story was going to what we're getting in part 2, it just not hitting the same. But, we will talk about that more in the upcoming Chainsaw Man chapter review. What is it, like 215, 216 tomorrow? Anyway, those are my thoughts on the movie. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Take care, guys.